Good morning and welcome to the Daily Planet Theater. I'm Dr. Julie Urban and I've presented in here. I'm a scientist in the genomics lab. I'm about to be faculty at Penn State, and in the last 4.5 years I've presented over 100 times in here, and this is my last time on this stage. So, yay! And so I couldn't be happier to hand it over to a group of talented scientists, but let me tell you about the special week you're here to share with us. And this is a week in which we have our teacher scientists who are working in our labs with us. And so this project called Students Discover is a 5-year National Science Foundation $7 million grant. And we have many partners, but basically at the crux of it is that it funds 5 postdoctoral scientists who are early career scientists, and they're each leading up, there's 4 projects that they're each leading up. And so this is their science. They're looking to publish their research in academic journals and get full-time jobs out there in academia. And what they've chosen to do is they've chosen citizen science projects. And so in this grant, each year, each project is paired with 3 middle school teachers. Those teachers are put up in hotels in the area because we draw them from around the state. And they work intensively in our academic labs, co-creating the science with these scientists. And then they take that science to the classroom where their students have that experience of scientific discovery through lesson plans, but basically the kids and the teacher scientists and our scientists are all doing real original research together. And so this week is the last week of that internship that we've had our teachers with us. And so Monday we heard from Team Soil, who's working up in the genomics lab. Tuesday, let's hear it for Team Soil. You're here, right? Woo, Team Soil. Tuesday we heard from Team Ant. Woo, all right, they did great. Yesterday we heard from eMammal and saw their fancy mammal shirts. Woo. And all of the surprised rats that they found. And so today we're going to hear from our final group, the paleontology group, and they call themselves the Dino Stars. And so I'd like to let them come on up and introduce themselves and share their science with you.
Thanks, Julie. We're excited to be here. We're going to share with you not only some information about Jason's research, which is becoming our research, and what we're doing in our classrooms, but we also just wanted to share what this journey has been like for us and some of the things we've learned, starting with trying to move beyond sort of that education about dinosaurs we all got in elementary school. So Jason's really been encouraging us to take a step past all of the basics, right? The dinosaurs that everybody is familiar with. So congratulations, you guys are here for the inauguration of the term that Jason coined, which is barnyard dinosaurs. And now my clicker's not working. We did check it. Hey, Mike. Nope. I'm sorry? Will it click manually? No. So it's an us problem. Right? Just hang out for a bit. No, we didn't check all of this. Yeah, we dropped Wi-Fi. So the
Swear it never works when you want it to.
I made you wait for it. So the term is barnyard dinosaurs, right? Which includes Triceratops and T-Rex, the ones that everybody knows. So in the spirit of going beyond the barnyard dinosaurs, we thought as a way of introducing ourselves, we would select a spirit dinosaur that's a match for our own true personalities to share with each of you, starting with Jason.
but of course. My name's Jason Burke. I work at the Paleo Lab here at the museum, and what I work on is soft tissue reconstruction in dinosaurs using digital models. And my spirit dinosaur is mighty Ankylosaurus, which is a big armored dinosaur, about 20 feet long, weighed about as much as a large truck. And because you're so well armored like that, you don't really care about what goes on, so you're just totally chill and relaxed.
I'm Beth Campbell, and my spirit dinosaur is Falcarius. A lot of scientists think she was probably an omnivore, which it appeals to me to not be limited in my food choices at all. Plus, she was discovered in a bone bed with at least 85 different individuals of her species, which shows that even in death, she liked to be around a lot of people. My name is Beth Campbell, and I teach at Mount Vernon Middle School here in Raleigh. I teach 7th grade science.
And my name is Kate Yarborough. I teach at Cane Creek Middle School, 8th grade science. My spirit dinosaur is the Dreadnoughtus, just because I've always been fascinated with sauropods, and I like big dogs, so I think I like big dinos too. So.
My name is Monica Ruffin. I teach 6th grade math at Warsaw Middle School in Duplin County. I think I struggled the longest trying to find a spirit dinosaur. They were not like pretty enough for me. So Jason was talking one day and he said, well, there's this dinosaur. It's known as like the good mother lizard. And so anyone who knows me knows that I love to talk about my son. So I figured the good mother lizard would be my spirit dinosaur, and it's called the Maiasaur.
All right, now that you guys know a little bit about us, we're going to help you know a little bit more about paleontology. So just kind of breaking up some of those misconceptions, some things that the three of us found to be interesting during our time here. First of all, the fact that paleontology is very much an active field. In 2015 alone, there were about 23 dinosaurs discovered and or named just within that calendar year. So it's really an active field. New discoveries are happening all the time. The skeletons that you see in museums, it's really only a small portion. Much of what's found in the field is wrapped in plaster and then sits on shelves waiting for either enough time and money or a new research need to warrant the steps in the preparation process. Something I thought was really interesting, this museum, as do many, has a full-time fossil preparer on staff, but most of the work is done by trained volunteers. So if dinosaurs are something you're interested in, there's some really cool opportunities there. I think it would be a great volunteer opportunity. As far as the time period in which dinosaurs lived and how long they were alive, it's not just some little blip in history. Dinosaurs spanned about 135 million years, and they didn't all live at the same time. In fact, an interesting fact that Jason shared with us, the distance in time between Stegosaurus and Tyrannosaurus is actually greater than the distance in time between Tyrannosaurus and present day. So the time period, I think, is really different than a lot of people expect it to be or remember it being. We don't just learn about the size and shape of dinosaurs from bones. By studying trace fossils, impressions from plants and footprints, we learn about the environment, we learn about weather millions of years ago. And we're also doing some new research studying the chemicals or proteins that are sometimes found, or trace proteins that can be found in fossilized bones as well. And the learning doesn't stop. We've discovered a lot of misconceptions, some things that paleontologists had wrong, and when we get new information, we adjust that knowledge and we adjust that learning. One common mistake that we made early on is the pose of Tyrannosaurus. A lot of you guys might recognize this pose with the tail dragging behind and the dinosaur standing upright. We now know that that's probably not how he spent most of his time. And the new poses, which you see in movies like Jurassic Park and in the juvenile T-Rex that's upstairs right outside the Paleo Lab, is more of a body centered over those two massive legs with the tail as a counterbalance to the head of the dinosaur. So the field of paleontology itself is expanding as well. So some of the bigger fields that are coming out, it includes paleobiology, which is sort of seeing how everything fits together, how one animal influenced another, how the environment influenced all of the animals in their evolution. Also molecular paleontology, as I mentioned, looking deeper into the bones as opposed to the bones themselves, but seeing what we can find within fossils. And functional morphology, which Kate's going to tell you a little bit more about.
All right, so for functional morphology, I have a picture of 4 different types of ceratopsian species that happen to share a common ancestor. Functional morphology is like the relationship between the same structures and their functions. So if you can look at the picture up above, you can see that obviously there's some similarities between them, but if you look at the different types or shape of the horns, of the frill, you can see some kind of differences between that. So that's how animals adapt through environmental stresses, through environmental changes, and that's really one part of studying functional morphology, is looking into why did those specific changes actually happen or occur. This is just like a family tree. It does not include all of the ceratopsian species at all. I just showed you just 4 of them, but again, you can see the variety between the skull shape, and this is just looking at the skulls. So one thing I want to make clear is that functional morphology didn't just die out with the dinosaurs. One of your most classic examples is probably like Darwin's finches or the Galapagos turtles. Another example could be the Anoles lizards. If you look at their skull shape, you can see some kind of variation between them. And then also with their skin on and what they look like normally, you can see some different coloration in their frills. So within that, if I look at the before picture, that's just kind of physical differences and kind of physical, visual observations of the changing morphology between species. But paleontologists are wanting to look deeper. What can you see that's not just observable? So kind of the old way investigating cavities, because if you're wanting to look in the internal structures, like Dr. Jason Burke is going to talk to you about his research, and his research is mostly on the nasal cavities and the airflow. Up until about the 1980s, in order for you to get a good picture and a good visual of the internal structures, they actually had to crack open the skull and look within those cavities, which it should pop up in kind of blue. So that was kind of destroying the fossil itself. So for some new ways and new work that paleontologists are doing through high tech, we were really interested as teachers in learning the computer software that paleontologists use, and also learning kind of software that we could bring back into our classroom. The 3 that are for free, because that's awesome, and that means that teachers, students, whoever, anybody on the internet can use, are ImageJ, MorphoJ, they like J's, and Landmark. And then not even close to free, but super cool to use, are your handheld scanner, which was awesome. I'll show you some pictures of that. 3D printers, which some classrooms have, and that's becoming more accessible, and CT scans, like using them through the hospitals. So let me give you kind of an example of using ImageJ, MorphoJ, and Landmark, so that you can get a kind of an idea if you'd like to check it out, etc. So if I were to take these 3 different lizards and get a picture of their skulls, and I go on ImageJ, it's a free download, and I download those images separately, and I know that it's kind of hard to see. Is that the clicker? But you see these different colors? Those are called landmarks, and what we're doing is we're landmarking specific features of the skull, just the external part, because what we're trying to do is, besides just visual observations of saying, well, that horn looks bigger, or this frill looks more ornate, getting kind of some mathematical, quantitative data in there. So what you would do is you would upload all 3 of these images, you would do landmarks, and you want to make sure that you do the same landmarks every time in the same order. And then let's say you want to go a step farther. Oh, I need to go back. That your data will be, you add it up on Excel spreadsheet. And then with that Excel spreadsheet data that you got from the coordinates, from the landmarks, you can download Landmark. Again, that's for free, and it is 3D, so you can kind of see all 3 skulls kind of morphing into each other, and you can visually see kind of physical changes between the skulls. And then we can also go a step farther depending on what you're interested in. This is Morpho-J, so you're still using Image-J, the data that you got from the Excel sheet. You download Morpho-J, and what this is doing is giving you a nice little graph here of each lizard skull that you put in. If you can see, the anole and the iguana are kind of the most similar, as the spiny-tailed lizard is kind of the most different, but then it also gives you a nice average skull between them. So you can kind of see the evolution kind of progressing in the specific adaptations. Also, I think that most of us think of paleontologists as using just primitive kind of tools. You see your classic example of them having a bucket and a paintbrush and something to scrape with, and that's pretty much it. But the new age in technology has really bumped it up, and fortunately for us, we got to take advantage of that. So let's say that we want to make a 3D model of something. This is just a Falcarius claw, which happens to be Beth's spirit animal, so it kind of goes in with that. So for us to do that, we use the scanner to do that. And then on the computer, this is what our Falcarius claw actually looked like. Pretty cool. And then we wanted to take a step farther. Do you guys have your little claw with you? All right. And do a 3D scan or a 3D printer imprint for us to all have. And obviously that's kind of taking it up a notch, because whether you're a teacher or not, but if you can actually have duplicate copies of something that has the exact measurement of things, then that's really helpful. And then the body of the Falcarius is on the screen, so you can kind of see what the interpreted visual looked like. And then the last one is the CT scan, which is pretty neat. Typically, we just think about them being used for human bodies, maybe for veterinarian clinics and things like that. But we can also look into the internal structures of dinosaurs using CT scans. So besides cracking open and destroying some of the fossil with a saw, you're now able to do that with a CT scan. All right, and I am going to pass the mic, not drop it, but pass the mic to Jason Burke so he can kind of explain it in more detail.
So the work that, so as Beth was mentioning, or as Kate was mentioning, we do a lot of digital work with these fossils, and we try to look at just beyond the bone. So in this case, we're looking at the skull of Euoplocephalus, which looks a lot like Ankylosaurus. And you can see it has that sort of short, boxy skull, but inside its skull it had this really long, crazy nose that had all these twists and turns in it. And this is just showing a run through where we were able to simulate airflow through it and actually see how heat transfers through that nose, so it gets some idea of the potential physiology for the animals. But in the process of doing this, we realized that we can't, that we get this idea that there's all these internal structures that don't necessarily match what we see in the external structure for the skull. And I was curious about how these skulls were changing in relation to their nasal passages. And so one of the ways I thought about doing that is we use these morphometric approaches, so the Image-J and Landmark. And we go to the next slide. You might have to actually click it. I'm going to fall off the edge. Yeah, so we have here a bunch of different theropod skulls. So they're all those two-legged, meat-eating dinosaurs. So they all share some of the various features in common, especially the sharp teeth. But you can see as we move from species to species that skull actually changes shape pretty dramatically as we move between them. And so what I was curious about is how that skull is changing shape, which bones in the skull are moving in response to what evolutionary pressures. And for that, we were going to use these morphometric approaches. But this landmarking that Kate talked about is actually, it can be very time consuming, and in order to make it work right, you need to have a lot of landmarks and you need to have a lot of skulls. So this is where the citizen science aspect actually comes in. And I'm going to pass that to Monica.
So we racked our brains on how we were going to include this in the classroom. We cannot bring in dinosaur bones or skulls or fossils. We don't just have them lying around in a closet somewhere. So we decided that we could still do the same thing. We could still use the landmarks, we could still use skulls, but we would do it on a smaller scale. So we decided to focus on the ceratopsian species. We give students 4 different skulls to look at, kind of do a written description. What do you notice just by observation? Give a little background information about each of those dinosaurs, and then we would take it a little further. They would have, one lesson would be on using a coordinate grid, and there are landmarks already there, so students would have to write down the ordered pairs, the coordinate points, and then branch off to record that data for each of the dinosaurs. For 6th grade math, they would determine the distance between some of the landmark points. Taking a little further, they could do some scaling, some measurements. And then we said that once they have that background knowledge, that idea, then they can go to the Digital Dinosaurs Project website and actually participate in the citizen science. So this is a screenshot of what the homepage looks like. And so this is actually logging in to the website. So they would go to digitaldinosaurproject.com. So once they are there, they have to create a profile. That way they can just easily log in. Once they are logged in, there are different skulls, different bones that are there for the students to be able to go in and place the landmarks on those skulls based on their experience with what we do with the classroom activity. So they would go through, they would choose, they would place the landmarks, and then all of that information would be shared with Jason and the other scientists in the paleontology lab. So this is a real CT scan that students would be working with. And we're gonna zoom it in, make it a little bigger. And then you'll see that there are gonna be some red dots that appear, and those are the actual landmarks. So we're placing landmarks around the nasal area. And then students would place as many landmarks as they need to. And once they have done that, there's the option to save it, and then that saved information goes into a database. So I think, to reiterate what has been said all week, we are so grateful for this experience to do real science with real scientists in the real world through Kenan Fellowship and Students Discover. Working here at the museum has been an awesome experience. There are so many things that we want to take back to our students and to our schools and to our communities. So we are so grateful for this opportunity.
All right, and before we open it up to questions, we just wanted to take a minute and acknowledge our teammates, the group of fantastic teachers that has been working together with us, Team eMammal, Team Ant, and Team Soil. Yesterday, there was what one Kenan Fellow referred to as shots fired, right? We just thought we should lay it out there. If it comes down to it, I know where my money's going, right? But no, of course, there is nothing but love among the Students Discover, teachers, and scientists. We've enjoyed working with all of you guys so much. So what questions can we answer for you?
Yeah, let's get a big round of applause.
Oh yeah, let's
for
do that
dinosaurs.
first.
Yes.
You guys go ahead, yeah. And now what questions can we, or Jason, answer for you?
And just to let you know, we're recording this because there's going to be links up on our webpage, and the teachers will be able to share this with their administrators. So we want to get the questions on tape.
So ask easy questions.
I'll try. So I was wondering or if there is a sort of final product for your students. So they learn how to lay the landmarks, and then they can submit those to the museum team. And then what does the students get back that says, or is there something that says, we did something really awesome and here's what the scientists have done with our data?
All right, well, probably Jason will speak to that, but while he's coming up here, The website is set up kind of like a game mode, where the students go through some really simple skulls and landmarking in the beginning, and as their skill improves, they unlock additional skulls that they can then work on. So there's sort of some progress monitoring that's built right into it. But I'll let Jason speak to the rest of your question.
Yeah, regarding final product, so the students are going to upload or going to collect that data, and then it gets uploaded to the database that we can then download. And we're installing a feature on the site so the teachers can also download. So there'll be projects that we will ask the students to do, but if the teachers want to do a specific project with their students where they just want to use some of that landmark data, that will be available to them. And the 2D landmarking that we were showed, and even the 3D ones that are done with the free stuff, will be available for the teachers to do as well. So we're looking at doing, lessons in the school that just do sort of a more local-based approach to see, like, how does this skull change from like getting really long or really fat in the animals. And then the more detailed stuff that we ask on the website, we can have the kids do afterward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. It was wonderful. I just wanted to know, for each and every one of you, what was your favorite part of the process that you each worked on?
I mean, I think we had a lot of favorites. Just getting to know Dr. Jason Burke was awesome, because I think a lot of us think scientists are so up here, and you are way up here, don't get me wrong. But to not feel intimidated, because I think we come from all backgrounds of like where we had maybe a little knowledge about paleontology, a little bit knowledge about dinosaurs. Some of that is completely misunderstood and interpreted differently in books and things like that. But for us to kind of take a step back and be students again on an entirely different level was just awesome. And then other than that, I think using the scanner, the laser scanner, was pretty awesome. I mean, I don't think I've held anything that was $50,000. So I was like, ooh, this is kind of scary and kind of thrilling, and it was awesome because it actually made something. It didn't just look pretty, kind of thing. So that was one of my favorites.
I think for me, just the experience itself. So now I can go back into my classroom and I can tell my students, I actually did this. Not like show them a video of someone else doing it, but I can share with them my experience. I held the scanner, I walked around it, and just calibrating that scanner was like exercise for me. So I can share that experience with them, and it would be more authentic because it's not just me showing a video, it's my personal experiences.
Yeah, of course, I echo what my teammates have said, working with Jason. Also, Dr. Lindsay Zano is here, Dr. Becky Gates from the Paleontology Lab. They've been awesome hosts. We've just wanted to kind of get our hands on everything, scanning the Falcarius claw, and Aaron, who's one of the preparers for the Museum of Natural Science, he let us use like the air scribe and the tools to carve away some rock from a not too precious fossil so we could try our hands. But that's been, I think teachers are often big kids and we just want to play. And we just got to do some amazing things while we were here. So it's been fantastic.
I'm sure working with landmark data on dinosaurs is not in the school's curriculum. So I'm curious how you tied it to the standards that you have to work with.
Okay, so for an 8th grade curriculum, one of the standards is for kids to really understand homologous and analogous features, which are oftentimes kind of confused. And then with the landmark data, what we're doing is we're trying, besides just visual observations of how organisms have changed over time, what I'm wanting my kids to do is go a step farther. We're collecting that data, but then also research why or predict why those changes have occurred regarding maybe the era that they lived in, the environment that they lived in, maybe some climatic changes, things like that. And that ties in perfectly with 8th grade curriculum because we have a whole unit on evolution and adaptation and really why changes occur over time.
I think it also ties into sixth grade math because of the landmarks. They can actually be called coordinate points. Like we can take that skull, put it on a coordinate plane. Students in sixth grade have to know how to label that coordinate plane, how to name those points, how to determine the distance between points. So we were also able to tie it into the math.
All right, well, let's give another round of applause. You guys did great. Thank you so much.
You're losing your...